If you knew that this apartment hides the secret of death, you would never come here. I approached the house and immediately noticed the windows of one apartment. They were the oldest of all. The paint peeled off the wooden frames, the glass was in the dust, and there were cardboard boxes on the windowsills. I counted the floors, the fifth, and the apartment I was offered is also on the fifth. Is it the same? So it turned out. Everything was in terrible condition inside. The door was made of plywood. The lock barely stood. I was opened by a guy my age. He didn't smile. His face was tired. His eyes were red. His curly hair resembled dry noodles. His greeting was cool. "Hi," he said, teasing the collar of the black sweatshirt. "Hi," I replied. "I'm Ethan." "Alex." The boy held out his hand. Her palm was sticky with sweat. "So, you're the landlord?" I said. "Yeah." Alex nodded and stepped back from the threshold. "Come in. Take a look." The apartment looked forced and faded. The wall was faded, dust on all surfaces. There were cloudy spots in the mirror instead of reflection. "Yeah, it's a bit messy," Alex muttered as he walked into the room. Every board creaked under his feet. "No problem," I replied, thinking I could clean up. It was cold. A draft was walking in the cracks of the old windows. There was an old folding sofa, a sideboard, a table, and an armchair in the room. Everything was dusty and looked old. My eyes stopped on the opposite wall, where there was another half-open door. "Just so you know, I'm renting only one room," reminded Alex. "And the next room?" I asked. "Empty," he replied. I came closer. Alex seemed to inadvertently blocked the way. "You can't use that room," he explained. "It's my cousin's stuff, a storage. Even I don't go in there." I didn't care. "No problem, door stays closed," I said. "Well, the door has issues, see?" he emphasized, pulling up the pen. The door did not close completely. There was a crack through which the room was seen, wooden floors, an old wardrobe, and boxes. "All right," I said. "Just don't go in. Pretend the room doesn't exist," Alex warned. "Fine, as long as the price is right," I nodded. The amount was symbolic. "Yep, that's it," Alex confirmed. I took out my passport and signed the contract. "Do you really need it?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "Better safe than sorry," I replied. The main thing is that the second room remained untouched. The keys were received, and I immediately started cleaning. There was so much dust that I couldn't stand it. I threw away buckets of black water, cobwebs, garbage. I threw it all away until the apartment turned into a clean space, except for the room that remained forbidden. What I found behind this door made me regret that I had ever agreed to this apartment. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling. The cold and silence in the apartment did not give me peace. I mentioned the forbidden room. The heart began to beat faster, and the mind whispered, "Don't touch." But curiosity took over. I went to the door. They were still half open, and the darkness of the room was seen through the crack. I pulled out the key, opened it quietly, and went inside. The darkness was not empty. The old cabinet, boxes, dust. There was a smell of old things in the air, as if time had stood here. I turned on the flashlight and noticed something strange. There was a small box wrapped in rope on the floor. "What's this?" I whispered to myself. I carefully opened the box. In the middle lay a pack of old letters and photos. Some depict people in dark clothes. In the background, the same apartment, but about 30 years ago. In one photo was a girl with black hair, whom I recognized later. Emily. I was cold. I put the box down, but my hands were shaking. In the following days, I began to notice strange things. Things from the room moved when I was in another room. At night, I heard quiet footsteps, and it seemed that someone was watching me. One evening, I met Alex in the hallway. "Hey, Ethan," he said. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, I just feel like someone's here, I admitted. Don't worry about it, Alex replied. No one comes in there, ever. But the sense of danger only intensified. One day, I woke up to a noise from that room. My heart was pounding because the door was closed. I walked over and heard a soft whisper. Emily. Help! A whisper sounded. But from whom? I began to doubt myself. Maybe it's my fantasy. But the photos, the smell of old things, and the coldness in the air gave no doubt. There is something here. And it's not just old garbage. Gradually, I began to keep a diary. I wrote down all the strange phenomena, looked for explanations. And the more I learned about the past of this apartment, the more I felt that something terrible had happened here. I never thought one room could turn my life into a nightmare. The evening was approaching, and I sat on the couch trying to calm my nerves. Emily, my girlfriend, came a little early, and I tried to act calm. You've got to see this place. It's weird, I said, leading her into the room. Don't scare me, Ethan, Emily smiled, but I saw a shadow of excitement in her eyes. I showed her the room, and she immediately felt the atmosphere. Dust, old boxes, wardrobe. So, what's in here? Emily asked. Nothing, just old stuff, I lied, even though I knew it wasn't true. After dinner, we sat down to watch the series. Everything was fine until I heard a soft creak. Sounds came from the room. Ethan, do you hear that? Emily asked. Yeah, probably just the wind, I replied, but my heart was pounding. I went to the room. The door was half open. The rope on the ceiling was holding in place, but something in the room seemed alive. I froze when I saw the shadow of movement. What the hell? I whispered. For a moment, the room was empty, but then something popped out on the edge of the flashlight. A figure hanging upside down, with hands instead of legs. A rope pulling it to the ceiling. Emily screamed, but I grabbed her hand. Don't move. Just stay calm. The figure stopped, looking at us. Only the eyes glowed in the dark. I felt that she wanted to say something, and then the words were heard. Ethan, leave. We immediately jumped back. Emily screamed and hid behind me. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I felt cold all over my body. It wasn't an ordinary play of light and shadow. Someone, or something, wanted to get us to leave. For the next few days, I couldn't sleep peacefully. Every creak and noise from that room made me tremble. I realized one thing. This apartment, this room, not just an old apartment. She had her will, and she was against me. I started looking for information about the previous residents. The old photos lying in the boxes reminded me of the scary stories I read in the newspapers about the disappearance of people in old houses. And then I remembered Lesha, or, better to say, Alex, the guy who rented me the apartment, who died, but left behind something that continued to live in the darkness of the room. Emily, I think this place, it's cursed, I whispered. Cursed? Come on, Ethan, don't be ridiculous, she replied, but there was a trembling note of fear in her voice. I knew it was dangerous to stay here. Something needs to be done. Otherwise, this apartment will take someone else. Maybe even both of us. What I saw in that room destroyed all my ideas about reality. The next evening I came home after work. My heart was beating fast. I knew I couldn't ignore that room anymore. Emily sat on the couch, trying to seem calm, but her gaze betrayed fear. Ethan, are you sure about tonight? She asked quietly. We have to know what's inside. It's not normal, I replied. We came to the room together. The door was still a little open. The rope on the ceiling was slowly swinging, as if it was waiting for us. I took a deep breath and pushed the door. In the room stood the same monster that hung upside down. His hands clasped the rope instead of his legs, his eyes lit up, and his mouth twisted in a fierce grimace. "Ethan, take it." "Back," he said in a dull, hoarse voice. I felt that his words were directed at me. The figure did not attack, but her presence was more terrible than any blow or scream. Emily grabbed my hand. "We need to leave, now!" But I realized it wasn't just a scary game. The figure wanted me to put the photos back in the boxes, as she ordered last time. I picked up Alex's portrait and carefully placed it in the top box, feeling the chill running through my entire body. "It's done," I whispered, feeling the weight fall off my shoulders. The monster hung for a few more seconds, and then slowly disappeared into the shadow of the room. Emily and I stood holding my breath. We were alive, but I knew this apartment would never be the same. The following days I tried to clean the apartment, remove the dust and old things. The rope was removed, the boxes were closed. The apartment no longer had that terrible feeling, but every sound reminded me of what had happened. I called brother Alex and explained everything. He confirmed that Alex died, but never thought that the apartment would continue to live after him. I understood the main thing. The keys did not just pass on access to the apartment, they transmitted the curse. Emily stayed with me, and we decided that we would never be alone with that room again. She helped me pick up all the leftovers of old things, and I finally felt light. But at night, when I was alone in the apartment, I still heard a quiet creak. Only now I knew I could control the situation. I wasn't afraid anymore. I put the keys back in my seat, locked the room, and decided, never repeat Alex's mistakes. This apartment taught me one thing. Even an ordinary place can hide incredible dark secrets, and not everyone who rents an apartment does it honestly. Sometimes keys are not just access, but a reason for nightmares passed from one tenant to another. The next night, I was left alone in the apartment again. Emily was already asleep, and I was sitting on the couch trying to calm down. But as soon as I relaxed a little, the quiet creak in the room made me shudder. "It's back," I whispered to myself. I got up and walked to the door. The open room looked even scarier. The rope swayed slowly, as if someone there was still alive. I remembered the portraits in the boxes. I felt cold in my back. "Ethan, you must," a hoarse voice whispered softly, which no longer sounded human. I stepped back, feeling my heart racing. The rope, the boxes, the room, everything seemed alive. I knew that it was no longer just a fear in my head. The apartment itself required the execution of old orders transmitted through Alex. I went to the boxes, checked the portraits. Everything was in place. And then my eyes stopped on a new, previously inconspicuous object, an old ceramic plate with cracks on the edges. She was lying between the boxes, and I felt like someone was watching through her. "Don't touch," whispered the same voice. I felt my hands shaking. Every creak, every breath of air seemed thoughtful, as if the apartment itself controls time and space. I realized that if I tried to ignore the room again, it would remind me of itself, with a rope, a creak, or even a voice. The next day I tried to do everyday things. I took out the garbage, washed the floor, cleaned the dust. But as soon as the evening came, my eyes were involuntarily returning to that room. Emily asked on the phone if I was ready to receive guests. I remembered that the apartment is now more dangerous for me than cozy. "Maybe. Let's not invite anyone tonight," I said. The feeling that the apartment was alive did not leave me. I began to notice the little things. On the floor, the cardboard boxes moved slightly. The rope under the ceiling moved, even when there was no wind. I realized that Alex had left behind not just an apartment. He left a curse that is now on me. I sat down in the chair and looked at the open door. My heart was beating wildly, but now I didn't back down. I knew that the apartment and the rope required attention, but I was willing to try to control the fear. The night fell on the apartment again, and I couldn't get rid of the feeling that I was being watched. Emily was sleeping in the room, but I was sitting on the couch, trying to concentrate on the usual things: phone, book, anything. But the rope in the sheltered room reminded of itself. She moved even without the wind, slowly but surely. "Ethan, come," said the voice, barely audible, deaf and mocking at the same time. I stopped, feeling the cold slowly stretching down my back. My heart was pounding as if it wanted to explode. Another minute and I walked back into the room. The light of the moon broke through the old curtains, illuminating the rope and the shadows of the boxes. I looked back. Emily was still asleep, as if she felt nothing. It was even more frightening. She could be there, and I felt lonely in front of something alive but invisible. I took a breath and said softly, "All right, let's see what's there." My hands were shaking as I pulled back the curtain and slowly opened the door. There was nothing in the room, only the boxes, the old cabinet, and the rope that hung from the center of the ceiling swayed quietly. I thought it was all just an illusion, but then I heard a soft squeak behind me. "Ethan." The whisper passed through the room, clearly and close. I turned around and my heart stopped. There was a figure in the shadows. The human likeness was difficult to see. It swayed like a pendulum, hands and feet merged into something strange, and the head was unnaturally suspended. "Don't move," said the voice. I couldn't move. Everything in me screamed to run away, but my feet didn't listen. Every creak, every rustle of boxes seemed to be part of some unseen game. I realized that the apartment now dictates the rules, and I'm not a guest anymore. I'm her hostage. The rope shoveled more often, faster. I felt panic rising to my throat, but at the same time, some instinct woke up. I didn't want to be passive anymore. I slowly, step by step, walked to the closet and said softly, "Show me what you want." The figure remained in place. The rope swayed like a pendulum. But this time, I didn't back down. I felt that if I broke my fear now, I could change something. I stood in front of the open door. My heart was beating wildly, and the rope was still quietly but surely swinging. The pendulum figure did not move away, as if waiting for me to take a step. "Ethan, you know what to do," said the voice, deaf and cold. I could feel the cold going down my back, but at the same time, determination was raging inside. "You can't hide anymore." I carefully walked to the cabinet and pressed one of the top boxes. They creaked, crunched, and the figure did not move, watching my every movement. In the highest box, I noticed something familiar. A portrait. Yes, the same one I took from the cemetery. My hands were shaking when I picked him up. The figure stopped. The rope fell silent for a moment, as if it was breathing with me. "Place it where it belongs," the voice said, and I felt an invisible weight fall on me. I, without hesitation, put the portrait in the box, neatly among the others. My heart was pounding so much that it seemed to be heard by all the walls of the apartment. The figure on the rope shuddered, as if approving of my action, and slowly stopped moving. I stepped back, and suddenly noticed that the silence in the room had become completely unnatural. Neither creaking nor breathing. Only the light of the moon emphasized the rope that no longer swayed. I exhaled, feeling a slight relief, but I knew that the danger had not yet passed. There was an energy in the room that could not be ignored. Emily was still asleep, not suspecting anything. I had a strange feeling. I completed part of the task, but the apartment did not let me go completely. Somewhere deep inside, I knew that bringing the rope back into place was just the beginning. The story with this apartment is not over yet. I walked out quietly, covered the curtain behind me, and sat down on the couch, trying to calm my heart. The moonlight illuminated the room, and I noticed for the first time the rope no longer moved, and the figure disappeared. The silence was tight, but no longer threatening. I exhaled and said softly to myself, "Maybe it's over." But I knew that even if the figure disappeared, the apartment left an imprint on me. What happened will never be an ordinary apartment. I sat on the couch. My heart was still pounding, but the rope was no longer swinging. The room was quiet. No creaking, no breath. Only the moonlight broke through the curtains, illuminating the dust on the furniture. Emily slept next to her, completely calm, unsuspecting. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down. Maybe it's all over. Maybe the rope figure will never come back. I even started to relax my shoulders when I suddenly noticed something strange. The boxes in which I left the portraits creaked softly. I leaned closer, and a terrible picture opened to my eyes. The photos began to change. The faces in the portraits, alien to me, but familiar at the same time, moved. Some turned their heads. Others whispered something I couldn't make out. "Ethan," whispered an invisible voice. I jerked away abruptly. Emily woke up, raising her eyebrows slightly in surprise. "Vadik, what happened?" "Nothing. Just things of light," I whispered. But my heart was pounding like crazy. I gathered my spirit and walked to the boxes. I lightly touched one portrait, and suddenly the room trembled. The light of the moon became brighter, and I saw the figure on the rope appeared again. But it was not just hanging. It was standing on the floor, almost transparent, and looking straight at me. "You remember?" A whisper sounded, and I realized that it was Lyosha, more precisely what is left of him. "I thought you were dead," I whispered, barely breathing. "The dead are never here. The keys, they are cursed," he said, and the room trembled as if the apartment itself had came to life. I stepped back, grabbed Emily's hand. She realized that something was wrong. "What is this?" she whispered, her eyes wide open. We have to go," I replied. And at that moment, the rope began to swing itself again. I ran to the door and rushed to open it. When I went out into the corridor, I saw a strange phenomenon. The apartment, which I knew, began to turn into something else. The walls were covered with shadows, the furniture looked older, and the sound of creaking was repeated from all rooms. "It's not just an apartment. It's a trap," I whispered to myself. Emily squeezed my hand but looked at me with confidence. I realized one thing. If we stay, we will become part of this death relay. And then I saw what turned my whole perception upside down. In the last portrait lying in the box, my face appeared. Quietly, but clearly, as if the apartment warned me. "You may be next." I turned sharply to Emily. Her eyes were in fear, but I understood. I had to act. We ran out of the apartment. The keys were left inside, and the door slammed by itself, as if sighing. The night outside was cold and filled with silence, but we were alive. The apartment was left behind, and the rope, figure, and portraits are her secret. But the feeling of a curse remained. I realized one thing. No one can break the curse if you don't go to the end, and leave everything behind. Emily held my hand, and we walked silently into the darkness, knowing that this night would change everything. And the apartment stood alone, in silence, ready for the next one who dares to enter.